Tonight, we turn our focus back to Afghanistan, a country where the echoes of America's longest war still shape global strategy and domestic politics. At the heart of this renewed attention is Bagram Air Base, a vast and once powerful US stronghold now in the hands of the Taliban. President Donald Trump has reignited debate by demanding that the Taliban return Bagram to the United States. His warning was blunt, unmistakable, and laced with consequence. Trump wrote, "If Afghanistan doesn't give Bagram Air Base back to those who built it, the United States of America, bad things are going to happen." This single sentence has set off waves across Washington, reviving old arguments about America's withdrawal and raising new questions about US power projection in the region. To understand the weight of this demand, one must first grasp what Bagram represented. The base was not an American creation. Built by the Soviet Union in the 1950s and expanded during the brutal Soviet-Afghan War of the 1980s, it became a fortress of concrete, steel and runways long enough to land any aircraft in the world. After the September 11th attacks in 2001, the base became the centerpiece of the US military campaign in Afghanistan. It served as a command hub for operations against al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and later ISIS-K. At its peak, it housed tens of thousands of troops, contractors and staff operating around the clock. For 2 decades, Bagram was more than just a base. It was a symbol of American strength, of sacrifice, and of the hope that Afghanistan might one day stabilize under international support. But history took a different turn. In the summer of 2021, under President Joe Biden, US forces withdrew from Bagram in secrecy in the middle of the night. The Afghan military was left in control, but within a month, the Taliban overran the facility. It fell on the very same day Kabul collapsed. For many Americans, the images of Taliban fighters seizing the airbase and parading with US-made weapons became emblematic of what critics called a catastrophic withdrawal. Billions of dollars in equipment, vehicles and supplies were abandoned, some of which later surfaced on black markets or were used in continuing conflicts. It is this loss, the base, the arsenal and the symbol, that continues to fuel Donald Trump's outrage. When asked directly about Bagram during a recent press event, Trump's frustration was palpable. He responded, "I'd like to get Bagram back, and that was gross incompetence to give that up. You know, it's one of the most powerful bases in the world in terms of runway strength and length. The strength and length. You can land anything on there. You can land a plane on top of it." The hyperbole may have drawn laughter in some circles, but the underlying point was serious. To Trump, abandoning Bagram was not just a mistake. It was, in his words, gross incompetence. Political commentators and analysts have quickly weighed in. The Washington Post editorial board even suggested that the idea of returning to Bagram isn't a bad idea, describing the base as once a symbol of American power that might still hold strategic value. Supporters of Trump's call argue that re-establishing a US presence there could help contain extremist groups, particularly ISIS-K, which continues to clash with the Taliban. Others highlight its geography, a position close to both China and Iran, giving Washington leverage in a volatile region. As one analyst observed, yes, the proximity to China is an important point, but critics remain skeptical. They argue that reclaiming Bagram would mean reigniting a war most Americans want to leave behind. Moreover, the Taliban are firmly entrenched, and retaking the base would almost certainly require large-scale military operations. Part of Trump's anger also ties to the material loss. In countless speeches and interviews, he has railed against the vast quantities of weapons and vehicles left behind during the withdrawal. Commentators reminded viewers that he still talks about the weapons and the vehicles, pointing out that some of them were sold or smuggled beyond Afghanistan's borders. To Trump's base, this narrative resonates deeply. It reinforces a picture of squandered American resources and failed leadership, themes he uses to contrast himself with the Biden administration. For veterans and families who served in Afghanistan, the mention of Bagram stirs strong emotions. It was through those gates that thousands of soldiers passed, some never to return. It was there that medical teams treated the wounded, aircraft launched into combat, and detainees were held in one of the most controversial prisons of the war. The loss of Bagram is, for many, inseparable from the loss of the war itself. Trump's call to get Bagram back taps into that sense of unfinished business, a belief that America's withdrawal was not only mismanaged but dishonorable. Military experts underline that Bagram is not just about nostalgia or symbolism. Its two massive runways and fortified infrastructure make it unique in the region. From there, US forces could project power into Central Asia, monitor militant movements, and apply pressure on regional adversaries. But the cost of retaking it would be enormous. Any attempt to do so without Taliban cooperation would mean open conflict. That prospect raises questions about whether Trump's words are meant more as a political signal than a practical plan. As the United States edges closer to another election cycle, Trump's demand for Bagram fits into a broader narrative of strength, deterrence, and America-first foreign policy. His supporters see it as proof of his determination to reverse what they view as Biden's greatest foreign policy blunder. His critics, meanwhile, dismiss it as saber-rattling with little grounding in reality. Yet, the idea continues to make headlines, and that in politics often matters as much as feasibility. Afghanistan itself remains unstable. While the Taliban control the country, they face internal challenges, particularly from ISIS-K, whose attacks have grown more frequent and more deadly. Civilians continue to bear the brunt of violence, poverty, and repression. For Washington, Afghanistan may no longer dominate daily briefings, but its strategic importance endures. The US still watches closely, balancing its attention between global rivals in Europe and Asia and the persistent threat of terrorism. In that context, Trump's warning, "Bad things are going to happen," becomes both a political message and a strategic reminder. America may be gone from Afghanistan, but Afghanistan is not gone from America's political consciousness. Whether the United States could ever return to Bagram is uncertain. The base today stands under Taliban control, its future unclear. But in American politics, its name continues to resonate. For Donald Trump, it is both a rallying cry and a symbol of what he sees as failed leadership. For critics, it is a reminder of why America left in the first place. And for countless veterans and families, it is a memory carved in sacrifice, triumph, and loss. As debates continue, one thing is undeniable. Bagram Air Base, even in Taliban hands, still looms large over America's strategic imagination.